everybody, and welcome back to the Oak Tree Football channel. So recently on the channel, I've been doing a series where I'm going to go through every NFL team and every college football team, and I'm just going to talk about their roster, their schedule, and give a record prediction for them. But today, I decided to do a record prediction for every team. It is a bit too early. We're still over 100 days till the NFL season, but I just decided that I want to do a record prediction. I still will be going through every team and talking about them. That's just going to be more in-depth. Here I'm just going to quickly talk about them, just say a few things that I think and why I gave them that record. So let's get right into it. Starting with the NFC West, and in fourth place I have the LA Rams with a 6-10 record. I don't necessarily think the Rams are a bad team. I just think that there are some pieces that they need to improve at, some important pieces that they lost on the team. And, the Rams have a really good coach. Sean McVay is one of the better coaches in the NFL. I'm just not sure of how he can really, the Rams are kind of in a really, really bad situation right now. Their cap space, they're a prime example of how a team can just completely fall apart in a matter of 2 seasons. They're losing a lot of players. Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks, Corey Littleton especially. That's one of the biggest losses. Because Corey Littleton is a very, very good linebacker, and he is now gone from the team. They didn't draft great. They drafted okay. I think Van Jefferson was a good pick, but there still are some big needs, and that's why I have him with a 6-10 record. At number 3, I have the Seattle Seahawks. I do not think that the Seattle Seahawks will be a bad team, and you can probably see that by the record. I give them an 11-5 at third in the division. It is just such a tough division, and I think the Seahawks will be a really, really good team this season. And I do think they'll make the playoffs, definitely, especially now that there's a 7-team playoff. I definitely think that the Seahawks will make it to the playoff. It's just a really, really tough division, and I think they'll be third. There are some holes on the team that they need to fix a bit, like maybe another wide receiver, another receiving target for Russell Wilson. And offensive line, that's one of the biggest needs on the team. But Russell Wilson's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and single-handedly, he is good enough to help the Seahawks have a good season. I could even see the Seahawks making a run in the playoffs. 11-5 record for the Seahawks. That's my prediction. Next, I have the San Francisco 49ers, also with an 11-5. They lost the Super Bowl this year, and some of the past few teams that lost in the Super Bowl haven't made it back to the playoffs, but I do think the 49ers will make it back. I'm not having them win the division, as you can tell, but it's such a tough division. I've said it already, but it's really, really a tough division. But the 49ers, great football team, really, really good football team. They are losing Matt Breida, but they still have some good running backs. Marquise Goodwin is gone, but he wasn't the best receiver for them. The only really big question for me is wide receiver. Do they really have a true number 1 receiver? Because Deebo Samuel is probably going to be their number 1 receiver next year, or Dante Pettis or something, which isn't the best. They are getting Trent Williams to replace Joe Staley. So it is a very, very good roster, and their defense is a very good defense. One of the best defenses in the NFL. They were one of the best defenses in the NFL last year, and they probably will be again this year. But I don't think they will be best in the division. I think the Arizona Cardinals will be best in the division. And I've been thinking this for weeks now. I had the Cardinals coming in with a 13-3 record. I've been thinking this for so long. I think Kyler Murray will play like an MVP in his second season. And some people might not believe that the Cardinals are going to go 13-3 this season. They were not great last year. But most people didn't expect the Ravens to go 14-2 last year. Most people didn't expect the Eagles to win the Super Bowl a few years ago. I think the Cardinals can be like that. They just come out of nowhere, really, and have a really, really good year. They have a lot of talent. Of course, DeAndre Hopkins now on the team. Kenyon Drake was productive in the end of last season for them. They have Larry Fitzgerald, NFL legend. Their offensive line is questionable, but getting Josh Jones in the 3rd round of the draft was really, really good. And then they have some good points on their defense. They did have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but they have some good points, and they couldn't prove. Budda Baker, he's one of the better young safeties in the NFL. He's really underrated. He made the Pro Bowl this past season. Patrick Peterson has been in the league for a long time. He's a really, really good cornerback. He's coming off his worst season, but he can still be a good player. They also have Chandler Jones, who has really, really been good for the Cardinals. And then they drafted Isaiah Simmons, who was one of the best defensive players, if not one of the best players in the draft. So I really think that the whole Cardinals team looks really good. They also have Cliff Kingsbury, who's coming into his second year coaching, and Kyler Murray with his second year as the quarterback. I think those two can have a great season together. Cliff Kingsbury, in his second season, we've seen coaches have good second seasons. Doug Peterson was a good example of that a few years ago. And then Kyler Murray, I said it earlier, I think he can play like an MVP. He's a really, really talented quarterback, and I think he can have a great season, both throwing and rushing. I think he can kind of have maybe not as good, maybe not as great, but he could have a Lamar Jackson type impact this season. I don't think he'll have as many rushing yards, but he could in like touchdowns and passing yards. He could be even better than Lamar Jackson. So that's why I have Cardinals at number 1. Moving on to the next division, the NFC East. At 4th, I have the Redskins with a 3-13 record, which is one of the worst records I have in the whole league. I don't know if Dwayne Haskins can be the guy who gets it done for the Redskins. I could see him having a better season, but in this prediction, I'm just not sure if he will. He doesn't have the best receiving targets other than Terry McLaurin. McLaurin is becoming one of the better receivers in the NFL, really. I think he can be a really good receiver, in my opinion. Running back Darius Geis is very, very underrated. But losing Trent Williams is going to hurt. They are getting Chase Young, who was arguably the best player in the draft, which is a great pick. But there still are holes in the team. There are definite holes, and they really need to fill them before they can be a team that contends again. Since it was going really well for them a few years ago with Alex Smith, and then when he got injured, it's just been downhill since that. So I expect another poor season from the Redskins. Coming in at number 3, I have the New York Giants. So I've talked about the New York Giants already. I did the record prediction and stuff for the Giants a few days ago. I had them going 5-11. The Giants, I could see Daniel Jones having a huge step up this year, but I could also see him falling, having a pretty bad season because he could either. It's Saquon Barkley though. Saquon Barkley is one of the best running backs in the NFL. So I think it's really going to matter about Daniel Jones. Doesn't have the best receiving targets, which isn't great. They still have Nate Soldier on the offensive line, who has not been productive since they signed him. Their defense doesn't really have any great players either. So, the Giants could have a good season, but I don't think they will. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they actually had a good season, but really right now I don't really believe that will happen. Next, in second place, I have the Dallas Cowboys with an 8-8 record. Recently, there's been a lot of hype around the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't think the Cowboys are going to be great this season. But I think next season, they can be really, really good. Because they had a great draft class. The rookies will be in their second season then. They have a new coach, Mike McCarthy. He'll be a second-year coach next year. I think next season can be really good for them. I just think this is like a year where they build up their team, get ready, and then next year is when they really, really become a competitor and they can become one of the better teams in the NFL. But Ezekiel Elliott is one of the better running backs. Dak Prescott, they did bring him back this offseason. He's a good quarterback. They brought Amari Cooper back for a lot of money. They have CeeDee Lamb. They have 3 really good receivers in CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper. So it should be a good team. Travis Frederick did retire, I think. They did draft Tyler Biadasz this season, which is good. And then they have some good players on their defense, too. So I expect a good season from the Cowboys. Nothing great, but like I said, next season is when I expect something really, really good from them. And then the winner of the division, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. I am a fan of the Eagles, but this is not why I have them there. I truly do think the Eagles will win the division this year. With the 10-6 record, I don't think they're going to be a great team, but I do think they will win the division. They have some good pieces on the team. Carson Wentz is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. He puts up some great numbers, even with really bad receiving targets. If the Eagles can stay healthy this year, it could be great. A really, really good season, I think. I'm not sure if they can stay healthy, though. But I really like Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders is actually really, really good running back, or he has potential to be a really, really good running back. They have Marquise Goodwin now. They drafted Jalen Reagor. They drafted a lot of receivers, and it looks like they're going for speed and players that can run deeper routes. That's what I think this season. They already had Deshaun Jackson. They added Marquise Goodwin. They drafted John Hightower in the draft. They drafted Jalen Reagor. So they're really looking for speed and players that can go for deep routes, it looks like. They also in free agency, they got Javon Hargrave and, of course, Darius Slay. Two pieces on the defense that should be really, really good. It's a good team for the Eagles. The Eagles have a good team. I do think it's the best team since they won the Super Bowl. There are still some questionable things. I forgot to mention tight ends. They have the best tight end duo in the NFL, in my opinion. Dallas Goedert could be a starting tight end for a team, and he's a backup on the Eagles because Zach Ertz is one of the best in the NFL. Jason Peters left after many seasons in the NFL. He left the Eagles after many years, but I still think the Eagles can be a good team. They have good pieces. They just need to stay healthy. If they can stay healthy and do things correct, they could be a good team. But right now, I do have them winning the division with a 10-6 record. So now going on to the NFC North. In fourth place, I have the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions really don't have the best teams. I think they'll be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I think after this season, Matt Patricia's going to get fired, especially if they have this record. Matt Stafford is a good quarterback. He's just been kind of falling off in recent years. Running back, Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift could be good together. They did draft Jeff Okudah in the first round, who I think could have immediate impact, but I just don't think the rest of the team is going to be good enough. They have two good receivers in Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. It's really going to be, I think, not a good season for the Lions. I mean, in a few years down the line, if they get a good coach and if they keep drafting well, I think they drafted pretty well this year, and they keep some of the important pieces on their team, in a few years, they could be a good team. But as of right now, not the best team. There are a few positions they need help at. T.J. Hawkinson needs to step up. They drafted him in the first round last year. He only had one good game, and that was his first game against the Arizona Cardinals. So he needs to step up. A lot of players need to step up if the Lions want to do better than this season. But I really don't think they will, and I think they will go 3-13. At number 3, I have the Chicago Bears with a 7-9 record. The Chicago Bears made some really, really good offseason moves, and it went pretty unnoticed. Robert Quinn was a very, very good move. The quarterback situation is going to be interesting if they have Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles, and that's going to be a huge part of the record, I think. They have one of the most explosive running backs in the NFL, and Tariq Cohen. He's entertaining to watch too. He's really underrated, I do think. He's a good running back. I think they might rely on him a lot, honestly. And David Montgomery's coming in his second season. I think he might get a lot of carries this year. They still have Khalil Mack on the team. But their defense isn't what it was a few years ago. They don't really have cornerback that great. They don't have the best safeties. And they have 10 tight ends on the roster. There are some things that don't make much sense about them, but I think the Bears can have a good season. Not make the playoffs, but still a good season. In second in the division, I have the Minnesota Vikings with an 8-8 record. I don't think the Vikings will be great this year. I mean, they drafted pretty well, but I don't think their offseason was great. I don't know about Kirk Cousins. I don't think he'll have the best year this season. And Dalvin Cook, if he can stay healthy, he can be a really good player. But without Stephon Diggs now, Adam Thielen is going to have to get a lot more catches. Justin Jefferson can be a good receiver for them. He's a really, really good receiver. But he's probably not going to make the same impact that Stephon Diggs did. Um, it's it's not the best team for the Vikings. I mean, it could be. They have two good safeties. Um, Two good safeties, but they really, really need help at cornerback, even though they drafted there. That's one of their biggest needs. Um, so, I mean, yeah, there are some needs for the Vikings, and I have them going 8-8 this season. And at number one, I have the Green Bay Packers with a 10-6 record. I think the Packers were a bit lucky that they went 13-3 this year, and I think they're going to get worse. They drafted so poorly. I think they're going to be worse. They haven't had a great year last season, and they have some good players on the team, just really with the lack of receivers, lack of good receiving targets for Aaron Rodgers. Their running backs look pretty good, but, I mean, and then, like, they're one game away from the Super Bowl, and then they took their first two draft picks were players that probably won't make an immediate impact, which is why the Packers draft is so questionable, because they could have gone for players that actually maybe could have helped them make the Super Bowl this season, but instead they went for the future players, which is important, of course, but like they could have been a Super Bowl team this season, possibly. They do have some hard games on their schedule. That's why I have them losing a bit. I don't think they're going to be that great this season. 10-6 isn't the best record, but I mean, it's really going to be interesting. If Aaron Rodgers plays well, even without some of the receiving targets, what I think, if the Packers make a big trade, because there have been some rumors surrounding them recently, if they make a big trade, they can be even better than this. They can be maybe even like 13-3 or something, one of the better teams in the NFL, if they make a big trade. If they don't, this is what I think they will be at. So, yeah, let's go ahead to the final NFC division, the NFC South. In fourth place, I have the Carolina Panthers, coming in with a 4-12 record. Teddy Bridgewater, I think, can be a good quarterback, and Christian McCaffrey can be a really, really good running back. But when you think about Panthers, like, really, like, good players, like, actually talented players, like, Christian McCaffrey is really one of the only ones you can actually think of, because they just have a lack of talent on their team other than McCaffrey. And I completely understand why they want to pay McCaffrey so much money, because he is going to be, without him, the Panthers really wouldn't be that much at all. They would probably be the worst team in the NFL without McCaffrey. I think Bridgewater isn't the best quarterback. I mean, he is maybe a bit of a system quarterback with the Saints. I think he could be good with the Panthers. They have Matt Rule now at their head coach, but it's still, I don't expect much from the Panthers this season. And I'm thinking they might draft a quarterback in next year's draft with one of the earlier picks. But moving on to number 3, the Atlanta Falcons, coming in with a 5-11 record. The Falcons are a really, really good football team. The only reason I have them at 5-11 is they have some tougher games on the schedule. Yeah, so I think they'll be good early in the season, but I think late in the season they have some tougher games. They do have Todd Gurley now. It's gonna be interesting to see how he plays, coming off a poor season with the Rams. Matt Ryan is pretty underrated. He's actually a really talented quarterback in the NFL. They have really good wide receivers in Calvin Ridley and, of course, Julio Jones, who's one of the best receivers in the NFL. They are losing Austin Hooper, who is one of the best tight ends in the league. And they are losing Desmond Trufant. They didn't draft the greatest. Getting A.J. Terrell in the first round was a bit questionable. So I think it's going to be... I could see the Falcons doing better than this. I don't think they would do any worse. But right now my prediction is 5-11. Moving on to number 2, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There is so much hype around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season about how they're going to be really good with Tom Brady and Gronk and all these receivers. I don't think they're going to be that good. Like, realistically, after the season, like the Cowboys, next season is what to get ready for. Because quarterbacks don't do great in their first season with Bruce Arians, who is the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has a really tough playbook to learn, and then some of the plays he does are different than what they would do, what quarterbacks would do with most other teams. But quarterbacks with Arians in their first season usually don't play well. But in their second season, they have really, really good seasons, great bounce-back seasons. And I think Jameis Winston would have had a really good year if they had kept him. But they decided to move on to Tom Brady, who I don't expect much from this year, even with some of the receiving targets he has. I don't expect much from him. They don't have the best running back in Ronald Jones. They have some great receivers. I think, some great receivers. Really good tight ends, too. I don't know if Gronk will have a good season. I think he might have a poor one. But their defense is actually really, really good. And they could have one of the best defenses in the NFL with Shaq Barrett. And then Sean Murphy-Bunting is coming into his second year. He could be a player to look out for. So there are some players to look out for the Buccaneers. I just don't think this is their season. But next season, just like the Dallas Cowboys, next season, that is when the Buccaneers can have a great year. And then at number 1 in the division, I have the New Orleans Saints coming in with a 13-3 record. I think the Saints will have a really good year. It will probably be Drew Brees' last season in the NFL. But the Saints are the most complete team in the NFL. I think they have the best roster. The only question is, will they be able to get over that hump and actually win in the playoffs? I think they will be able to this year. I'm not doing a playoff prediction in this video, but if you want me to, I can do that later. But I do think the Saints can have a really, really good year. Such a good team. If Alvin Kamara can stay healthy, he should be one of the better running backs in the NFL. Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I feel like everybody knows that at this point, but it's true. And Michael Thomas, one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the NFL. Jared Cook, if he plays anything like he did in that 49ers game at the start of the 49ers game, he played great before he got injured. If he plays like that this season, he can be one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And their defense is good. Other than Marshawn Lattimore, though, their secondary isn't great. They had only 4 draft picks. But, I mean, with the right coaching, which they already have, and with the right, if players play how I expect them to, they should win the division and be one of the best teams in the NFC. So that's all the NFC teams. Now we're going to move on to the AFC, starting with the AFC West. And at the bottom, I have the Oakland Raiders coming in with a record of 5-11. The Raiders, are a really questionable team because they could either have a good season or a bad season, I think. Derek Carr, I don't know about Derek Carr. Marcus Mariota, I don't know about Marcus Mariota either. Running backs, Josh Jacobs is one of the best running backs in the NFL, and he will be. He's only played one season in the NFL. And then Derek Carr or Marcus Mariota, whoever plays quarterback, is going to need some more receiving targets. Hunter Renfrow had a good rookie season, but other than that, more receiving targets are definitely needed. They signed Corey Littleton, which is a really good signing. The AFC West is a really good division. I just think the Raiders are the worst team in it. With the high draft pick, they could go out, get somebody, and be a top team next year. But right now, I think they won't be good this year. So moving on to number 3, I have the LA Chargers. The Chargers, I've been going 10-6 this season. I'm interested to see who plays quarterback for them. If it's going to be Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert, I think it will be Tyrod Taylor. Quarterback is the only position that's really, really questionable because I don't think Justin Herbert will be a great NFL quarterback, and Tyrod Taylor hasn't really proved himself. I mean, he's kind of proved to be maybe like an average quarterback, but Austin Eckler is a good running back. 2 really good receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Hunter Henry is a really good tight end. They just have a lot of really good players throughout the team, and their secondary is improving now, getting Chris Harris, adding him to Casey Hayward, and like some other players that they already had. Really, really good secondary for the Chargers. Really good team overall. They have Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, Derwin James. It's a really, really good team all around, especially on their defense. I think their defense could have a really, really good year. So that's why I have them going 3rd in the division. 2nd in the division, I have the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, I think, could be really, really good this year. I actually think they could win the division over the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think Drew Lock will have a really, really good season in his second year. I just think that the pieces aren't perfect for the Broncos. I think next year or a few years down the line, the Broncos can be one of the best teams in the NFL once again. I think Drew Lock can have a really, really good year. I mean, we haven't seen much from him, but I still do believe he can be really, really good, especially with some new receiving targets like Jerry Jeudy. That was a great pick by the Denver Broncos. And then running backs, Phillip Lindsay, such a good running back. He was an undrafted free agent a few years ago, and he started to turn into one of the better running backs in the NFL. They signed Melvin Gordon. They already had Courtland Sutton on the roster at receiver. They are losing Chris Harris, which isn't great, but they drafted well. They drafted pretty well. They had a pretty good free agency, and really, I think the Broncos can be a very good team next season, and I do think they'll make the playoffs. But that brings me to the number one team in the division, which you already know. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them going 12-4. They have a few tough games on their schedule this year, but the defending Super Bowl champions, they're definitely going to win the division. I did say the Broncos could have a chance, but I do believe it will be the Kansas City Chiefs. Their roster is so good. I could even see them going better than 12-4. One of the best offenses in the NFL. Their defense has a few holes, but their offense, Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, in my opinion, the best running back in the draft. He can be really good for them. Tyreek Hill, one of the most explosive, one of the best deep threat wide receivers in the NFL. Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. That offense is just so good. And Mecole Hardman is coming for his second season. He can have a really good second year. But their offense was already good, and then adding Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there is going to be so deadly. There are some holes in their defense, but I do think they, even without the Super Bowl, Andy Reid is a top 5 coach in the NFL. He's now probably top 3 after the Super Bowl win. The Chiefs have such a good team, and they will probably be one of the best teams in the NFL this season, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to the Super Bowl and even win the Super Bowl for the second year in a row. Moving on to the AFC East, in fourth place I have the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins had a really good free agency. They had a pretty good draft. I just don't think the pieces will be enough this season. I do think Brian Flores is a really good coach. It's just, the pieces, even with a good free agency and stuff, their linebackers are great. They have some really, really good linebackers. Bringing in Kyle Van Noy just makes the linebackers so good. They have a really, really good secondary with Byron Jones. They drafted Noah Benogany in the draft. They already had Xavier Howard. It's a really good team all around. The only question is quarterback, in my opinion. And I don't know if the quarterbacks are going to play great. I don't know about the production from them. A few years from now, they could be a good team. I've said this about multiple teams, but with their free agency, with their draft, a few years down the line, they could be a good team. Tua Tagovailoa I think he can be a really, really good quarterback in the NFL if he can stay healthy. I don't expect to see much from Tua this season, much playing time from him. I think it will be a lot of Ryan Fitzpatrick, but they have some running backs now, which is good because they really didn't have a running back last season. And the receivers are pretty good, and Devontae Parker and stuff. So it could be a good season by them. But right now I have them going 4-12. Third in the division, I have the New York Jets also going 4-12. Once again, the Jets. Sam Darnold has not had a great career so far. I think this could be one of his better seasons, even with some poor receiving targets. But it's just going to be tough for the Jets to be good because they have tough games in their schedule. They really don't have the best team. They actually got a good offensive lineman in the draft, which is really good, in Mekhi Becton. But it's not in the best roster. If we can see a step up from Le'Veon Bell, they could have a good season. But Le'Veon Bell just disappointed for them. Didn't even have 1,000 yards. He needs more touches, honestly. But he needs to show that he can step up because he had a good season. Had a really bad season last year, sorry. Their defense, they have some good points in their defense. But there are still a lot of holes for the Jets. And they need to fill those before they can be a good team. Second in the division, I have the New England Patriots with a 7-9 record. The Patriots, I think Jarrett Stidham can be a really good quarterback. I haven't really talked about that on the channel, but I really do think Jarrett Stidham could be a really good quarterback. I mean, he hasn't really proved himself to the NFL yet, but Tom Brady hadn't proved himself in the NFL at this point in his career, and he went on to be arguably the best player of all time. I'm not saying Jarrett Stidham's going to be the best player of all time, but I think Jarrett Stidham can be a good player. It's just going to be hard on a actually pretty poor Patriots roster, especially some of the free agency moves they made. They're losing a lot of players. Sorry, didn't draft the greatest. It wasn't terrible, but it could have been better. They're losing so many pieces on the team. They don't have good receivers. They don't have a tight end, really. Sony Michel didn't have the best season. He's going to need to step up. And then they lost a lot of players in their defense. Last year's best defense in the NFL, I'm not sure if they're going to be as good this season. So it's really going to rely on some players that you wouldn't really want to rely on for the Patriots this season. But I still do think they can have a 7-9 record because they are the Patriots and they do have Bill Belichick and they still do have good pieces on the team. Like Julian Edelman is an example of that. They still do have good pieces on the team. They just need to be able to do it well. I don't think the Patriots will be a playoff team this season. But maybe in the future, Jarrett Stidham can be a good quarterback and he can take the team to the playoffs. And winning the division, I of course have the Buffalo Bills coming in with a 10-6 record. Bills finally got Josh Allen a really good target to throw to and Stephon Diggs this offseason. Josh Allen, I expect to step up from him. He has not proved himself to be a good quarterback in the NFL so far, but I think he can this season. Devin Singletary can be a good running back this season. So it's a pretty good team for the Buffalo Bills. There are a lot of really good pieces on the team. So I think if they play it right, they could be one of the better teams. I could see them going better than 10-6. I could even see them going 12-4. Tre'Davious White is one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL on the defensive side. They have some good safeties in Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So I think it can be a good season for the Bills, just not great. But I do think they will win the division, which of course means I do think they will make the playoffs. Next up is the AFC North. In fourth place, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals had the first pick in the draft, and I do think they will improve this year. I think Joe Burrow will actually have a really, really good season. It's just they're going to need some more improvement before they can really be a top team in the NFL. They have some good receivers. They have a good running back, and I think they have a good quarterback now. Their defense is what's worrying me a little. They have Geno Atkins, but not much else. They have Jesse Bates at safety, who could be good, but really not much else. So it could be. I could see the Bengals doing better than this, but I could also see them doing worse. I could see them having one of the first picks in the draft once again. But I mean, Joe Burrow, maybe not this season, but I think he can be really, really good for the Bengals one day. And yeah, I think the Bengals are going to go 5-11. In third place, I have the Cleveland Browns coming in with a 7-9 record. Baker Mayfield needs to have a good season. He really needs to have a good season. Otherwise, the Browns might pass on him, like in 3 seasons. He had so much hype around him, and then it's really all died down in a matter of a season. And if he has another bad season, I mean, it might be over for him, honestly, because he has 2 top receiving targets, and yet he still puts up not the best numbers. But that being said, Odell Beckham needs to step up. Jarvis Landry's actually been pretty good, but Odell Beckham needs to step up. He didn't have the best season with the Browns. Going into his second season, he could be good. The Browns have a new head coach in Kevin Stefanski, who is the offensive coordinator for the Vikings, who could be good. But I think, maybe not yet, but the Browns do have some good pieces on the team, especially, I haven't talked about it yet, but Nick Chubb and Denzel Ward, 2 really, really good players. So the Browns have potential to be a very good team. If Kevin Stefanski is good, has a good season, coaches well, if Baker Mayfield bounces back, if everything goes right, the Browns could have a really good year. But right now, I'm not sure if it will, so I have them going third. Second in the division, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are going to have a really good season. Really, really talented team. They have Juju Smith-Schuster at wide receiver, one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. So they're really good at wide receiver. They're really good on the offensive line, and their defense is so good. Micah Fitzpatrick is one of their better players in the defense. They are losing Javon Hargrave, but still, it's a great defense. And their team is really good, and a really good way to a good example of that is last season they went 8-8 with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges as their quarterbacks. Those are not starting caliber NFL quarterbacks, and yet they were still in the hunt for the playoffs late in the season. They're getting back their starter in Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not sure if he's going to be great coming off the injury, but I still think it can be a good season for the Steelers, and I think it will be 11-5, and I really do think the Steelers will be a playoff team this season. And winning the division, I of course have the Baltimore Ravens. Such a good season for them last season, and it will be another one, I think, unless Lamar Jackson gets injured. But such a great, they're really good running the ball. They drafted well. I had Patrick Queen in the 28th pick in the draft. Great pick. Really, really, really good pick. Lamar Jackson maybe needs a few more receiving targets, but really it's just a really good team, both on the offense and the defense. Earl Thomas is a good safety. Marcus Peters is a good cornerback. It's just a really good team all around, and I do think the Ravens will be one of the best teams in the NFL with a 13-3 record. Moving on to the AFC South, and at bottom I have the Jacksonville Jaguars with a 4-12 record. Jaguars are considered to be the worst team in the NFL by most people. I don't think they'll have the worst record, but their roster really is one of the worst rosters in the NFL. Gardner Minshew, I think, is a bit overrated. He's been really hyped up. He's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if he's going to be the guy that can really lead the Jaguars to what they were in 2017 when they, of course, made the AFC Championship game. Leonard Fournette is a good running back, but they're talking about trading him. Yannick Ngakoue still hasn't been traded, but it could happen at any moment, really. So it's just they're in a rebuilding phase right now. A few years down the line, after they've rebuilt more, they could be a good team. But right now, it's just not the best roster. They don't really have good receiving targets either. Laviska Shenault was a really good pick though, but they don't have the best receiving targets. And their defense isn't that good anymore. Losing Calais Campbell, losing AJ Boye, losing Jalen Ramsey, losing so many big pieces. They did draft really well, but it's not going to be enough to have them have a good season. At least this year. Maybe in a few years they could be good. But right now I don't think they'll have a good season. At third place I have the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts had a good offseason. I just don't think they will have the best season. I don't really know why. I just don't expect much from Phillip Rivers. They have some really good running backs, but they did make some questionable picks at the draft. They don't have the best receiving core. Malik Hooker is a really good safety, but they actually declined his fifth-year option. So it's really questionable, some of the moves the Colts have made. They've made some good moves. They definitely made some good moves, but they've also made some really, really questionable ones. And I'm not sure if they can make the playoffs. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I don't think they'll have a great year. I think they maybe should trade Jacoby Brissett away because I think they could get something good for him. And they're going to need all the help they can get right now because they did draft Jacob Eason in the 4th round. Phillip Rivers is probably going to be there for like one more season. And I don't know if he's going to play great. He's coming off a really, really bad season with the Chargers. He threw like 4th most interceptions in the NFL. So if Phillip Rivers can play well, I think the Colts can play well. But I don't know if Phillip Rivers will play well. Going on to second in the division, I have the Houston Texans. And I talked about it in my Deshaun Watson video yesterday. Just with Deshaun Watson, the Texans can be a contender for the playoffs. That's how good Deshaun Watson is. And he will stay that good because he's unbelievably talented. They do have Brandon Cooks, who could be a good receiver. But they don't have the best running backs. Brandon Cooks is really their only good receiver. There is a lot of spots where, they have Kenny Stills and Will Fuller also, who, they don't have any great receivers, but they don't have any, those three guys aren't bad, they're just not great. Their defense, there are some spots where they need help on their defense. They're coming off a really good season. I just don't think they'll be that good because Bill O'Brien is kind of ruining the Texans right now. Um, so, I mean, they have some tough games in the schedule, and I don't expect them to win everything, especially with the roster they have. But like I said, Deshaun Watson is good enough to have them in the playoff picture. But I do not have them winning the division. Of course, I have winning the division the Tennessee Titans with an 11-5 record. We all know the story of the Titans last year. Made it all the way to the AFC Championship game, surprising everybody. And now, after a season, they will have Ryan Tannehill full season instead of just the end. Derrick Henry coming off an incredible year. A.J. Brown going into his second year in the NFL. They have a lot of good pieces on the team, and I think they've been doing pretty well in like the free agency period. Their draft wasn't the best, but still a very good team by the Titans. They've done it very well, and I think they will be one of the better teams in the AFC this season. All right, so here is the playoff picture that I have for the NFC. At the 1 seed, I have the New Orleans Saints with 13-3 record. 2 seed, I have the Arizona Cardinals with a 13 record. 3, I have the Packers with a 10-6 record. 4, the Eagles with a 10-6 record. 5, the 49ers with an 11-5 record. 6, the Seahawks with an 11-5 record. And 7, the Buccaneers with a 10-6 record. That's who I think will make the playoffs for the NFC this season. So I already talked about these teams, but so I do think Tom Brady and the Buccaneers will be able to squeeze into the playoffs, just barely, but still they do squeeze in. Yeah, so that's the playoff picture there. So I'm not doing playoff predictions, but if this was to happen, the Cardinals will play the Buccaneers, the Packers will play the Seahawks, and the Eagles will play the 49ers in the playoffs, with the Saints getting a first-round bye. Moving on to the AFC playoff picture, the first, number 1, I have the Baltimore Ravens with 13-3. 2, I have the Kansas City Chiefs at 12-4. 3, I have the Tennessee Titans at 11-5. 4, I have the Buffalo Bills at 10-6. 5, the Broncos at 11-5. 6, the Steelers at 11-5. And 7, the Chargers at 10-6. So there are some really good teams in the AFC, and I do think a lot of them of course, a lot of good teams will make the playoffs, but a lot of teams that actually have a lot of wins, I think all the playoff teams this year will be in the double digits. So yeah, that's actually going to be about it for this video. If you did enjoy, please leave a like down below, and if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe. Comment down below what you think will happen in the playoffs this season. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.